Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf 80 of Masechet Yoma, which is pretty cool because that we're like in the last, I don't know, what do we call that? 10 thingy of Masechet Yoma, because Yoma is 88 Daf and we're at 80. So we're in the last 10 thingy of Masechet Yoma, so that's cool. Alright, what does today's daf talk about? So we wrap up our discussion of the shir achila, which is a kiko sevis, and we get into discussion of a shtickle, the shir of shtia. Discuss different options over there, which is interesting, and then wrap up with just kind of some more details about the different shiurim of achila, shtia, toch kidech, achilas pras, things like that. So let us begin all the way at the bottom of daf ayin tes amud beis. Tanya, Rebbe Omer, now we're on Pei Amud Aleph. Kol hashiurin kulan bichzayis chutz mitumas ochlin. That in general, when we have shiur achilas, the amount that the measurement for eating, it's going to be a kezayis, an olive's worth. However, when it comes to tumas ochlin, the impurity imparted in foods, who could tell me what the shir for tumas ochlin is? Kebeya, of course. Shashina akasav mashman v'shinu chacham b'shiurin. That the pasuk is a shtickle different. We're going to see what that means in a minute. The pasuk is a shtickle different by tumas ochlin and all right. Okay, fine. By tumas ochlin and there. So the pasuk, right? The wording in the pasuk is a little bit different by tumas ochlin, and therefore the shir is different. It's not a kazayis. It is a kibeitza. And v'rai ledavar Yom Kippurim. And the proof for this, what's this? The proof that, or the sort of precedent, or what we can rely upon, another situation where the pasuk says something differently, and it ends up with a different shir, is Yom Kippur. Let's see, what does that mean? What does that mean that by Yom Kippur it says something differently? Milo seune. Well, it doesn't say lo sochal, it doesn't say don't eat, even though that's what it means, don't eat. But it says lo seune. It says something differently. Don't afflict yourself. So because the pasuk is written differently, so it also has a different shiur. It's not a kezayis, it's a kosevis. So the shiur is a kosevis, it's not a kezayis. So we see that by Yom Kippur, we have a different wording, which is lo seune as opposed to lo sochal, and the shir is a kosevis. Also by tumas ochlin, which we haven't yet explained what it means that the pasuk is different by tumas ochlin. We'll have to get there in a minute. But by tumas ochlin, suffice it to say that the pasuk is written in a way that is different, and the shiur is also different. It's a kibeitza, it is not a kazais. Umayraya ledavar Yom Kippurim. How come we say that Yom Kippur is sort of the proof? Right? Meaning, if we're saying that we have two cases where the pasuk is written differently and it has a different shiur, how come Yom Kippur is sort of the definitive one and Tumah is learnt out from there? So the Gemara answers the Imei Hasam, because if the proof would be coming from Tumah, Hava Amina, I would say Orcha Dikrahu. So by Tumah, I would say it's just the regular way to write it. Now, we haven't yet said what the pasuk is by Tumah. We're about to say that, so let's go weiter for a minute. Tumas ochlin kibeo minalon. How do we know that the shir of Tumas ochlin is the size of an egg? Amar Babo, Amar Belazar, says Babo in the name of Belazar to Amar Kra mikola ochel asher ye'achol. That the pasuk says mikola ochel asher ye'achol, from any of the food that can be eaten. Ochel haba machmas ochel. So we're talking about food that comes from another food. Veze zebeitzas tanagolis. And what is food that comes from another food? The egg of a chicken. Kilu, chicken is food. Lots of people eat chickens. And eggs is food. Lots of people eat eggs. Eggs comes from chickens. So it's food that comes from food. Now, to just go back for a minute, so we had said that it may have had the having to say that Mikola ochel asher ye'achol is just a regular way of saying stuff, right? We also see in the case of drinks, it says v'chol mashke asher yishase, right? So I may have thought the kol ochel asher ye'achol, there's nothing special about that, so I would have overlooked it and not thought that we should learn out anything special about a shir from it. So therefore, because of that, we have to bring the proof really from Yom Kippur, where it's clear that lo se'uneh is a strange word because it should have said lo sochal, and it says lo se'uneh, from which we say it's a different word and it's a different shear. So also when it comes to tumas ochlin, asher lo chol ochel asher, what does it say? Mikol ochel asher yochel is not just a regular way of saying something. Rather, learn out something special. Learn out a special measurement from there, and we're saying that is to learn out that it is the size of an egg. So the Gemara says, wait, but not so fast. Why are we just so quickly getting away with the claim that an egg is the only thing that is food that comes from food? What about a goat? A goat, l'maise, I assume, I never had a goat, but I assume that a goat comes from another goat. It doesn't just come from nowhere. Mistamit, it comes from a goat, right? Meaning you have a goat, and a goat gives birth to another goat. So a goat is food that comes from food. So ve'ema gedi, so mechusar shchita. So the Gemara answers, well, ena chinami, but a goat needs to be slaughtered. It's not kilu ready to be eaten as is. An egg, you just I guess technically you have to fry it, but what do you want me to tell you? Lemaise, I'll tell you something. Lemaise, I didn't cook an egg for 1.5 years because you had to cook it. And I didn't feel like cooking it, but really, let's be honest, I didn't feel like washing the dishes. Uncle Ponim. Where are we? It's lacking shchita. Okay, but apparently that's not as much of an issue with an egg. Maybe you can eat raw eggs. Let's go weiter. Ben pakua. But I think we can all agree that cooking an egg is definitely much easier than killing a goat. Mistama. Let's go weiter. Ben pakua. Why don't we say that it's talking about if you slaughter a goat and you find in the goat is another goat, 2 for the price of 1. So it's kosher. So there you don't have to slaughter it, it's already slaughtered. So ta'un kriya, but you still have to tear it out of the animal, which I guess is a thing. Alright? V'ema beitzas bar yuchni. Fine, so if we're saying it has to be an egg, but why does it have to be like an egg of a chicken? Maybe it's an egg of a bar yuchni, which is apparently a very large Indian. Tafasta mubala tafasta. Tafasta mua tafasta. We say, look, don't get carried away. Tafasta mubalo tafasta. If you try to take too much, if you try to chop too much, you end up with nothing. So therefore, don't get started with bar yuchni eggs. Chicken eggs are fine. Tafasta mua tafasta. If you chop something that's just a good smaller, acceptable size, then that's good. Viba isema. If you want, I will say the following. What? No, it doesn't say that. Ve'ema be'asa de tziporta. So why don't we say that it's the egg of a smaller bird? The zutter tuva, it's too small. So lemaisa, chicken egg. When it comes to tumas ochlin, the shear of tumas ochlin is a chicken egg. Givaldi. Rababo didei amar mikol ochel asher yoachol. Rababo himself, meaning we just said this, Rababo quoting Rabbi Lazar is Rebbe, as Rashi points out that he was his teacher, which is very interesting. Makes sense. It's very interesting. So Rababo a second ago, when he says the egg of a chicken, was quoting his Rebbe. Rabbi Lazar, now Rababo didei, Rababo himself says, it's food that you eat in one sort of eating. And the Chachamim have a measure which is that your throat cannot hold more than the egg of a chicken. So we see that the egg of a chicken is right. So we say whoa. Right, the amount of food that you can eat at once, and the maximum you can eat in one sort of, swallow would be the size of an egg. So therefore, we must be talking about this a chicken egg when it comes to tumas ochlin. All right, givaldig. Nu socheve. If I ask you what's the shear of eating on Yom Kippur, you'll tell me it's a koseves. If I ask you what's the shear of tumas ochlin, you'll tell me it's a chicken egg. Amar Belazar says, Belazar, ha'ochel chaylev bizman hazeh. Somebody who eats chaylev nowadays by accident, so he has to bring a korban chatas, korban oshim, korban chatas, something like that. He's got to bring a korban. So the shear of eating chaylev is a kezayis. Now, nowadays, of course, we don't bring korbanos. So says Rabbi Lazar, ochel chaylev b'zman hazeh, if somebody eats forbidden fats by accident nowadays, so sheyichtov lo shir, he has to write down on a piece of notebook paper how much chaylev he ate. Shemayavu bezdin acher v'yarbe b'shiurin, because maybe another bezdin will come and change the shiur. Okay? Ma yarbe b'shiurin. What does it mean that maybe they'll come and change the amount? Meaning you have to write down how much chaylev you ate just in case they change the amount. What does this mean? In well, if you say, well, maybe the Beis Hamikdash will come and Bezdin will say that actually we're going to be more stringent, and you're going to have to bring a korban even if you ate a small kazayis. We're going to say we're not. There's medium-sized olives, large olives, small olives. So you ate a middle-sized olive, but maybe they're going to change the rules and say that. You ate a small olive. You ate a small olive, which normally would be okay because it's less than a sort of a middle average olive. So you ate a small olive, but maybe Bezdin's going to decide, that for small olives you actually have to bring a korban. In which case you're going to be chayav to bring a korban, or at least we want to say for now that. So therefore, even if you eat a small amount of chaylev, write it down, so just in case later on Bezdin changes the amount, you'll know, and therefore you'll know if you have to bring a korban or not. V'atanya, but come on, that doesn't make sense. V'atan asher lo saisena b'shkaga v'oshem, that when it says to, oh good, maybe now we can figure out if I think it's talking about korban chatas. So it says by korban chatas that if it's something that you do by accident and you realize that you did it by accident, so ashav midiyasu maybe korban al shigagaso. That kilu, if you go back to Masechta Shabbos for a second, right? We said what's shogeg? Shogeg is kilu. You knew it was Shabbos, but you didn't realize that this thing was Asr. Or you knew that this thing was Asr, but you didn't realize it was Shabbos. Let's say, meaning something that is Asr and you didn't realize that it was Asr and therefore you did it. But lo shav mi diaso, it may be korban ashigagaso. But if it's something that was mutter, you don't have to bring a korban chatas for it. Meaning, in this case, where at the time that he ate this less than a average kazayas of chaylev, there was really nothing wrong with it. He could have done it again because kilu. At the time, we were working with average size olives. He ate less than an average size olive. He didn't do anything wrong at all. If later on Bezdin says that actually we're changing the shear to be a smaller olive, that's not going to affect him because what he did at the time that he did it was not something that he would have said, oh, I did something wrong. He didn't do anything wrong at the time. So therefore he's going to be part of korban chatas. So therefore, it can't be that he has to write down how much chaylev he ate just in case they make the shear smaller, because he wouldn't have to bring a chatas in that case. Ella tlo mechayve korban adika kazayis gadol. No, so rather, what if they decide that actually you're only going to have to bring a korban if you eat a large kazayis of chaylev? And what it's saying is that, so if a fellow eats bizman hazeh a kazayis of chaylev, right, like an actual kazayis of chaylev, and he wants to write it down, what he should write down is, he should not write down, I'm going to be chayav a korban, because just in case Bezdin actually makes the shear to be a larger kazayis, well then he actually didn't eat this large kazayis worth of chaylev, so it'll be part of a korban. So he shouldn't write down that he's chayav a korban because he ate a kazayis of chaylev. What he should write down is just that he ate a kazayis of chaylev, and then later on, in the event that Bezdin says, actually, you're only going to be chayav if you have a larger kazayis of chaylev, then he's going to be potter. But he should keep track of the fact that he ate chaylev, but he shouldn't write down that he's taka chayav a korban, just in case they're going to say that it's taka a larger shear. And that's what it means, that if somebody eats chaylev b'zman hazeh, so shichtov lo shir, he has to write down the amount, shemayavu bezdin achav v'yarbe b'shurin, just in case Bezdin later on makes the shiur larger. So then he'll be potter from a korban. So he doesn't write down that he's chayav a korban, he just writes down how much chaylev he ate. And for the Gemara, when we initially said that maybe what it means is that just in case Bezdin comes later and makes the shear bigger, we wanted to initially define it as being actually making the shear smaller and say you'll be chayav a korban on a smaller kazayis. But how does that fit in with the fact that it says that maybe they're going to make the shear bigger? And then you're saying, because they might make it smaller, but it said bigger, not smaller. Cheve, you get the kasha, right? So, Shemayaybe bekorbanos machmas shiurin. What it means is not that they're going to make the shiur bigger. No, the concern according to the Havamina in the ratio is that they might make the shiur smaller kazais. But by making it the shiur a smaller kazais, and by saying that if you have a smaller kazais of chelev, you're already going to be chayav a korban. Well, then there's going to be more korbanos because more people are going to eat, be chayav a korban because they made the chiyuv shiur less. So therefore, what it means is sheyarbe b'shiur, and it means that there's going to be more korbanos, more korban chatas, is on account of the fact that they made the shiur smaller, and more people are going to be chayav a korban chatas. Rabbi Yochanan shiurin ve'onshin alach l'Moshe Misinai says Rabbi Yochanan that measures and punishments are alach l'Moshe Misinai. Onshin michtav ksive. Effective Gemara. What do you mean that punishments are alach l'Moshe Misinai? Punishments are written in the Torah. There's plenty of punishments written in the Torah. El achi kamar. Shiurim shel onshin alach l'Moshe Misinai. That the measures of onshin, kilu, the measures of things that you'll be chayav punishments for is alach, right? The measurements essentially are alach l'Moshe Misinai. Tanan am yachi, we talk in the brayso shiurim shel onshin alach l'Moshe Misinai, that the measures are alach l'Moshe Misinai. Acherim omim, others say bezdino shel yavitz tiknum. The taka is the bezdin of yavitz. Rashi says who's yavitz? It's Osniel ben Knaz. All right, that was the brother-in-law of Kalev ben Yefune, or something like that. The son, the brother-in-law, something like that. Maybe the son, maybe the brother, maybe the brother-in-law, somehow connected to Kalev ben Yefune, I think. Osniel ben Knaz. Sounds like a good guy. Tiknum ve'aksiv ela mitzvah she'en. Let's do that again. The Acherim says that the shiurim are not alach l'Moshe Misinai, rather bezdino shel yavitz established them. One second, how could it be that the bezdin of yavitz established them? That a navi is not allowed to add something to the Torah. So how could it be that the bezdin yavitz, they decided what the shiurim are going to be? So rather what it means is that no, the taka forgot them. Meaning the shiurim are alach l'Moshe Misinai, but then they forgot. Wait, but what are these different measurements for different things? Like kazayas and so Gemara, and we saw it a few times already. Gemara in Eruvin, Gemara in Brachas, I think we saw it. I think we're going to see it in Sukkah as well soon. Akaponim. So it was alach l'Moshe Misinai, but then they forgot these amounts, and the bezdin of yavitz kind of reminded Am Yisrael. Okay, so now we get into the shiurim of drinking on Yom Kippur. So hashosim lo lugmav. So the Mishnah says if somebody eats a cheekful on Yom Kippur, so then he's going to be chayav kares. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Lo melo lugmav mamish ela kol sheilu yisakenu l'tzad echad v'yeroy kim lo lugmav. You hear that? Let's read that again. It says of Yehuda in the name of Shmuel that lo melo lugmav mamish doesn't mean that you have to fill up your entire mouth, i.e. both cheekfuls worth of whatever you're drinking. Ela kol sheilu yisakenu l'tzad echad, even if it's one cheekful, enough that you could take all the liquid and move it to one side of the mouth, v'yeroy kim lo lugmav, and it'll look like a cheekful, then that's enough. So one cheekful. V'anatnam lo lugmav. So fact the Gemara, yeah, but it says lo lugmav, which the Mishnah says lo lugmav, not just ki'ilu kim lo lugmav. It says lo lugmav. I guess the assumption being your entire mouthful. So ema kim lo lugmav. So I'll say it's like lo lugmav. All right, sounds good to me. So like one cheekful. Meis, we have a kasha. How much does a fellow need to drink on Yom Kippur in order to be chayav kares? B'shamei om revius. So Beishamei says the amount is a revius. Okay. V'sila omim lo lugmav. Whereas Beis Hillel say it's the cheekful. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Eliezer kim lo lugmav. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Eliezer it's like a cheekful. So Kilu, the assumption for now, I believe, is that Kilu Beis Hillel is saying your entire mouthful. And Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rabbi Eliezer is saying one cheekful. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer Kedei Gemia, whereas Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that it means enough to swallow. Enough to swallow. So what's the shaila? The shaila is that over here we say the opinion of Beis Hillel is a mlolugmav, which is the same thing as it says in our Mishnah, and it must be that the mlolugmav, I want to assume that the mlolugmav of Beis Hillel is an entire mouthful, which means that the mlolugmav in our Mishnah is also an entire mouthful. You'll only be chayav for drinking on Yom Kippur once you have an entire mouthful of whatever you're drinking. So the Gemara answers me, Adifum Masnisim, why should the fate of this Mishnah be, or this Brisa, be any different than our Mishnah as well? Our Mishnah said Mlo Lugmav. We said it means Kim Lo Lugmav. So why don't we say also that Beis Hillel, when they say Mlo Lugmav, it's also Kim Lo Lugmav. So it says the Gemara, 1 second. Well, do Kimna Kadei Sheira, but then, whoa, 1 second, let's read that again. Mi'adifum Masnisim, do Kimna Kadei Sheira, Achanami Kadei Sheira, Yach Yahanu Rabbi Eliezer. To which the Gemara says, no, but you can't do that here. You can't just say that when Beis Hillel says Mlo Lugmav means Kim Lo Lugmav, because guess what? In the same Brisa, that's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, that Mlo Lugmav is Kim Lo Lugmav. So it must be that Rabbi Eliezer is, as he says, Kim Lo Lugmav, and Beis Hillel is regular Mlo Lugmav, i.e. a full mouthful, and therefore our Mishnah, when it says Mlo Lugmav, must also mean a full mouthful. Ikebenayu Mlo Lugmav Dachuk, to which the Gemara answers no. Both Beis Hillel and Rabbi Eliezer are talking about Kim Lo Lugmav, one cheekful, and our Mishnah is also talking about one cheekful. So then what's the nafkamina between Beis Hillel and Rabbi Eliezer? Mlo Lugmav Dachuk, if it's exactly the size of a Mlo Lugmav. That Beis Hillel would say, no, can even be sort of a larger amount until you're chayiv, a little bit more than Mlo Lugmav, whereas Rabbi Eliezer would say you're already chayiv even if it's exactly a Mlo Lugmav. Alright, sounds good to me. You hear that, Chevra? If that's the case, asked Rav Hoshaya, well then this is an example of Beis Hillel being more machmir than Beis Shammai. Right? Of course, in general, Beis Hillel is more lenient. But in this case, if we say that Beis Shammai says you're only chayiv for drinking on Yom Kippur once you have a revius, just like 4 ounces or something. So, and Beis Hillel says you're chayiv already once you have a cheekful. So that's, a cheekful is less than a revius, and therefore Beis Shammai is being more lenient. So it should be listed with the examples of the leniences of Beis Shammai in Masechta Eidius. Omerle, so the Gemara answers, Ki itchil b'og melech haboshen itchil, da'avule Beis Shammai l'chumra. Gewaldige answer. Okay, sounds kind of magical, but the Gemara answers, well, Beis Hillel's actually talking about the cheekful of Og Melech HaBashan, the famous giant Og, who obviously had a giant cheek, and therefore a giant cheek can hold a lot more liquid than a revius. So actually, Beis Hillel is being more lenient because you're only going to be chayiv, or at least Og Melech HaBashan is only going to be chayiv for a full cheekful. Alright, sounds good to me. Maskef Reb Zera. So now Reb Zera asked the following question. I don't know if I read right. The Havalu Beis Shammai l'chumra, so Beis Shammai is actually being more machmir because they have a smaller amount. Maskef Reb Zera asked the kasha mashna achila d'chol chad v'chad b'kikoseves mashna shtia d'chol chad v'chad b'didei. You hear the kasha? The kasha is, how come when it comes to achila, to eating, there's one amount, the size of a date? I don't care if you're a shmendrik, I don't care if you're Og Melech HaBashan, you eat the size of a date, karis. And yet, when it comes to drinking, we have this relative amount. If you're a shmendrik, you know, it's the size of your little shmendrik cheek. If you're Og Melech HaBashan, so it's the size of your big giant Og Melech HaBashan cheek. It's obviously a big difference between those two sizes. So when it comes to eating, it's an objective amount of a date. When it comes to drinking, it is relative to the person's cheek. Omerle Abai responds to Reb Zera, which is very interesting. Reb Zera was older than Abai. Reb Zera was like Rabbah and Rav Yosef's generation, I think. Also, he moved to Eretz Yisrael. So I don't know why Abaye, who would have been the next generation, would be responding to Reb Zera, even, and also considering the fact that, Mistama, once Abaye got older, Reb Zera was probably already in Eretz Yisrael. So it's very interesting. Akoponim. Amale Abaye, so Abaye says to Reb Zera, Kimnu l'Rabbanan b'kikoseves debachi meis v'daiti batzum yochel lo meisva, says Abaye, look, what do you want me to tell you? The rabbis in their infinite wisdom said that when it comes to food, the size of a date is an objective measure. I don't care if you're Mr. Shmendrik, I don't care if you're Og Melech HaBashan, you eat the size of a date, you have at least what's considered meisva daita. You have some kind of alleviation of hunger. You might not be satisfied, you might not be full, but you have some kind of alleviation of hunger. Bishtia, however, when it comes to drinking, the rabbis said, B'didei meisva daita, b'dchavi lo meisva daita, it's relative. A cheekful is what is meisva daita when it comes to drinking. That if you have your shmendrik cheekful, that's enough. Whereas Og Melech HaBashan needs an Og Melech HaBashan cheekful in order for it to be enough. Maskif le Reb Zera asked the following kasha: V'chol olam kulo b'kikoseves v'Og Melech HaBashan b'kikoseves. How does that make any sense? That Mr. Shmendrik eats a koseves and he is meisva daita, and also Og Melech HaBashan eats a koseves and he's meisva daita. Amle Abaye kimnu l'Rabbanan debachi meisva daita batzum yochel meisva daita. Abaye says, what do you want me to tell you? That's what the rabbi said, that when it comes to eating, a koseves is objectively meisva daita. Even if you're Og Melech HaBashan, miu kuli amatuva Og Melech HaBashan purta. But okay, I'll agree that mistame relative, on the range of hunger alleviation, it's probably going to have a more significant impact on Mr. Shmendrik than it will on Og Melech HaBashan. Maskeflo Reb Zera asked Akasha, Basar Shamin b'kikoseves v'lulul ve'gefanim b'kikoseves. How does it make sense to say that if you eat a date's worth of good geschmacke fatty meat, even just the sound of it sounds like it's going to make a fellow full. Even a date's full, a date worth. And that's the same amount as eating like grape shoots of sorts, which I guess is not as satisfying as fatty meat. And therefore, right, so Reb Zera is saying, I don't understand. A fellow, we're judging a date's worth of fatty meat in the same way that we judge a date's worth of like grape shoots, which are like pretty light and probably not so satisfying. Amale Abaye says to Reb Zera, look, the same answer. He says, look, what do you want me to tell you? The rabbi said that it's objective. That when you have a koseves, the size of a date is what sort of alleviates your hunger to some degree, whether it's fatty meat, whether it is grape shoots. But he says, look, granted, I'll give it to you that the fatty meat's probably going to have a more significant impact than the grape shoots. Maskiv la Rave asked the kasha, Kizayis b'chdei achilas pras v'koseves b'chdei achilas pras. Now Rave asked the following question. He says, look, we know, right, the general amount for a kizayis that you have to eat it b'chdei achilas pras, right? The amount of there's a certain amount of time that it takes to eat a half of an 8-egg loaf of bread, so 4 eggs worth of bread. That would be. So I guess the general time, the average time that it takes to eat that amount of bread is what's called kedei achilas pras. So whenever we have something that you have to eat a kazayis of, you have to eat a kazayis of it within the amount of time that it takes to eat, this bread. That is 4 eggs worth of bread. So the amount of time that it takes to eat 4 eggs worth of bread, you have to consume the kazayis within that time frame in order to be, considered to have eaten a kazayis of whatever thing that we're talking about. So Rav is asking, when it comes to kazayis, right? So let's say chelev. So you have to eat a kazayis of chelev within the amount of time that it takes to eat, kedei achilas pras. Correct, Rava, does the same thing apply to the dates on Yom Kippur? That a date, which is a larger amount, we're saying that if you don't manage to consume the entire date within that same time frame that we use for a smaller amount, which is an olive, if you don't manage to eat the entire date's worth within kedei achilas pras, you're going to be patur from kares. But that's a leniency, because a koseves is a larger quantity of food. Therefore, you should the time frame for it to still be considered having eaten it within a appropriate amount of time should be a larger time frame, right? More food, there should be a larger time frame. But we use the same time frame of achilas pras, kedei achilas pras, and therefore we're saying that if you don't manage to eat the entire koseves, b'chdei achilas pras, you're going to be patur from kares. But for the larger share of a date, shouldn't the time frame be larger? Get the Gemara's kasha? Abai says again, what do you want me to tell you? The rabbi said that the time frame of achilas pras is what's considered meis v'daite. If a fellow eats this date's worth in larger than kedei achilas pras, he's not going to have proper hunger alleviation that he would be chayev kares for. Maskif Rava asks the following question: Kizayis b'chdei achilas pras v'chatzi pras b'chdei achilas pras. Rava then asks, 1 second. So again, a kizayis, you have kedei achilas pras to eat, but there are situations where there's actually a share of a chatzi pras, right? That if you eat a chatzi pras of tamei foods, so half of this 4 eggs worth of bread, i.e. 2 eggs worth. So if you eat 2 eggs worth of tamei food, so then you become tamei to the extent that you're not allowed to eat truma, right? So if you're a kohen, if you ate 2 eggs worth of tamei food, so then you would not be allowed to eat truma. Now, Rav is saying, so I know that when I eat this small amount of an olive, so I have to eat it within kedei achilas pras, but this much larger amount of 2 eggs worth, I also have to eat within the amount of time that it eats that kedei achilas pras. That's it, right? And if I don't, so I'm not going to be considered tamei. That's a leniency again. Rav Papa says to Rava, Hanach l'tumas gvia t'lav d'oraisa. Rav Papa says, look, the halacha that when you eat tamei foods, you yourself become tamei to the extent that you're not allowed to eat truma is midorabanan. Midoraisa, there's only one example of a fellow becoming tamei, and that's nivlas of tahor. That if a fellow eats, right, it's mitame b'beis abliya, that if a fellow eats the carcass of a kosher bird, but it's nevela, okay, it wasn't slaughtered, so then it'll make you tamei. That's the only case midoraisa where you become tamei from eating tamei foods, and therefore, when we say that if you eat tamei food, then you become tamei to the extent that if you're a kohen, you're not allowed to eat truma, that's only midorabanan. And therefore, since it's midorabanan, the fact that we're lenient to say that you have to eat all of this food within sort of kedei achilas pras, and if it takes longer than that, then you're still tahor, it's okay to be lenient because it's din derabanan. Umi Amar Rav Papa, meaning the Rabbanan were lenient. Umi Amar Rav Papa, Achiv, does Rav Papa really say that this fellow becoming tamei from eating this food is only midrabanan? V'aksiv, but it says v'lo sitamu boim v'meisen bam. V'amar Rav Papa mekanshe tumas gvia d'oraisa. Rav Papa says that from this pasuk of that do not become tamei teaches that tumas gvia is d'oraisa. That eating these things, right, as the pasuk says, lo sishaktus nafshuseichem b'chol asheretz hasharetz v'lo sitamu boim v'nit meisen bam. Don't become tamei from shrotzim, if you, right, and Rav Papa wants to say that we learn out from here that if you eat tuma, you become tamei, that's midoraisa. So how could Rav Papa be responding to Rava and saying, well, tumas gevia is only midorabanan, therefore the rabbis were makel and gave this more lenient share of you're only tamei if you eat these 2 eggs within kedei achilas pras, even though it's sort of a quick amount of time to eat all this food, relatively speaking. But Rav Papa says, yeah, but that's only midorabanan. But Rav Papa says that a fellow eating tamei foods and becoming tamei himself, so that he doesn't eat truma, that's taka midoraisa. So midorabanan v'kras machta ba'alma. So the Gemara says no. I mean, interesting answer, because we seem to be saying that Rav Papa is saying doraisa, but the Gemara says no. Rav Papa doesn't actually mean it's doraisa, it's actually derabanan. And this pasuk that he's bringing is actually just an asmachta, but it's a din derabanan that if you eat tamei foods, you yourself become tamei to the extent if you're a kohen, you don't eat truma anymore until you become tahor. So that's midorabanan. And this pasuk of v'nit meisen bam, right? V'lo sitamu boim v'nit meisen bam is derabanan, and it's an asmachta b'alma. The pasuk is just an asmachta. Kol ha'ochlin. Okay, so we said that all of the different kinds of foods join together in order to create this koseves amount to be chayiv kares and Yom Kippur. Amar Papa says, Papa achol umtzo milcha mitztarif. If a fellow eats meat with salt on it, so the meat and the salt can join together to create the koseves that you will be chayiv kares for Yom Kippur. And even though salt in general alone is not something that you would eat, however, but since people eat salt together with meat, so when the salt is together with the meat, it'll join together and you to create a koseves, and you'll be chayav kares for eating on Yom Kippur. Amr Rish Lakish says Rish Lakish, Tzir shal gabi yerek, if you have some kind of a brine on vegetables, mitzdarif l'kikoseves, so the brine can join together with the vegetables to add up to a measure of a date's worth to be chayav kares in Yom Kippur. This is obvious that the brine should be included. Well, I may have had the opportunity to say that the brine is considered a mashke, and therefore we know in the Mishnah that ochlin and mashkin are not mitzdarif. So therefore, I may have thought to say that they would not join together. That it comes to teach us that no, anything that's like achshuri ochlu. What does Rashi say? Mashka ba limatik es ochel ochlu. Right, liquids that come to sweeten up the food are themselves considered food, and therefore the vegetables with their brine can join together and create the shear of a koseves for Yom Kippur. Sounds good to me. Amr Rish Lakish says Rish Lakish, ha'ochel achila gasa b'Yom Kippurim pater. That if a fellow eats achila gasa on Yom Kippur, so as Rashi says, for example, if he ate a lot at the Suda Mafsekes, and he ate plenty at the Suda Mafsekes, and now it's Yom Kippur, and he eats more on Yom Kippur, but he's already full. So he's pater from kares, because my taima, asher lo su'uneh ksiv, prat lemazik. The pasuk says, look, right, somebody, asher lo te'uneh, somebody who does not afflict himself on Yom Kippur, so then he's chayv kares. What do you mean don't inflict yourself? Well, if you eat, then you're not afflicting yourself because you're eating, you're not in an uncomfortable situation. However, if you're already full, well then this eating isn't really taking you out of that state of being uncomfortable, right? Rashi says it very well. What does he say? He says, he's not undoing any sort of discomfort by this eating because he's already full. It's not like he's hungry and now he's eating and alleviating his discomfort. He's already full, right? So therefore he's going to be pater from kares. Amr Reb Yirmiyah says, Reb Yirmiyah, Amr Rish Lakish, of course we know that if a fellow eats truma by accident, so he has to pay back the amount of truma that he ate, but also he adds on a fifth to it. Now says Rabbi Yirmiyah in the name of Rish Lakish that if a zar, so a non-kohen, eats truma by accident, but it's achila gasa, he's already full, and he's eating it, so it's not proper achila, it's achila gasa, mishalim sakeren, so he only pays the principal, he doesn't pay the additional fifth. Because it says that he has to eat, whereas over here he's not eating, he's already full. So therefore he's going to be pater from paying the chomesh. Amr Reb Yirmiyah, Amr Reb Yochanan, says Reb Yirmiyah in the name of Reb Yochanan, Zar shekose seorim shel truma mishalim misakeren v'nim mishalim misachomesh. As Rashi says that top Rashi of Pei Aleph Mud Aleph, kol davar shu ochlo shlo k'derech achiloso kari lekoses. Anything that you eat in an irregular way is called koses. So if you eat barley in an irregular way and it's truma, so again you pay the principal amount, you don't pay the additional fifth. Kiyochal prat lemazik, it says if you eat, you have to eat it, not this sort of damaging, not normal way. Amr of Shezvi, sort of graphic content warning. If you don't have the stomach for this, I suggest listening anyways, because then you're going to miss something. Amr of Shezvi says of Shezvi, Amr of Yochanan, Zar Shabala Shazifin Shel Truma. If you have a fellow a non-kohen who swallows prunes of Truma, Vikion, and then he vomited them out, V'achlan acher, and then somebody else ate them. You hear that? That's gross, right? He vomited out prunes and someone else ate the prunes. That's nasty. Rishon mishalim karen v'chomesh sheni mishalim elad me'etzim l'rishon b'vad. So the first fellow has to pay the principal amount plus the fifth because he ate prunes. So like their truma, he has to pay karen and chomesh. However, the second fellow who ate the vomit, well, at that point he basically, well, those prunes at that point, they're already like eaten and vomited and stuff. You can't really do any, like the first guy, as Rashi says, kind of acquired them once he ate them. So they're like his, and you can use them to like burn or whatever, I guess. So the second fellow who eats the vomit, so he just needs to pay back the first fellow for the value of the vomit that he ate, of the prunes that he ate. Sounds delicious. No, that's not true. It sounds gross. All right, Chaver, that was Daf Pei of Masechta Yoma. So the first part of the daf was really just kind of like getting into some details, right? We had the statement of Rebbe that in general, whenever we have a shir of achila, it's always going to be a kezayis, the exceptions being Yom Kippur, where it's a koseves, and Tumas Ochlin, where it's a kibetza. We then saw an interesting machlokas about different shiurim about how much you have to drink on Yom Kippur. We have the opinion of Beis Shammai who says it's a revius. We have the opinion of Beis Hillel who says it's a cheekful, a one cheekful. We have the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer who also says it's one cheekful, the nafkamina being if it's like exactly one cheekful. Beis Hillel would say you're not chayav for that. Rabbi Eliezer would say you are. And then there's the opinion of who was last opinion? Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, who says the amount to swallow. Alright, sounds good to me. Then we got into this interesting discussion and all these questions and answers from Abaye about the fact that when it comes to achila, when it comes to eating on Yom Kippur, it's an objective amount, it's a kosevis. When it comes to drinking, it's sort of a relative amount because it's a cheekful and everybody's cheek is different. But we say, look, that's what the rabbis established, that when it comes to this alleviation of hunger, when it comes to achila, it's going to be a kosevis, full stop, right, a date amount, objectively. And when it comes to drinking, it's going to be the size of your cheek, and that is that. And then we talked about foods joining together, and we said that salt and meat, if they're if you have salted meat essentially, so it can combine for the size of a date. Also, the brine of vegetables can join together with the vegetables to create a koseves. And if you eat achila gasa on Yom Kippur, sort of, right, it's not to alleviate any hunger because you're already full, so then you're actually going to be potter from kares. Alright, Cheve, that was Daf Pei of Masechta Yoma. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.